forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever. Being high forever. You could run, but you can't hide forever, forever.
The hip-hop writer is a creator, composing understanding words of cultured brilliance, powering a rebalance of the elements equally. Pages of rejuvenated reaffirmation, simply the almighty leadership of insightful craftwork that stands to build through any confrontation born to be. Yet his daily duty is as a journalist that questions properly, uses his ears for the good to filter the real. And as the art decays by dilution, he concentrates the best again and again, exposing it in the print. Today's journalist and tomorrow's historian, he listens to share. Here is that necessary attempt executed again and again and again. This is the Power Right Show on S.STREET Media. This is your brother, the lone low life, with the home-sewn garment, the Boricua with the build, the true and living God stepping in score. Sunyaz Allah, a.k.a. S.STREET Low, and we're on S.STREET Media, the evolution of media, where every intrigue will have its own show, every incredible thought will have its own episode, and every timeless insight will be archived. Again, this is my element of hip-hop, and this is the only show on it that exists, what I call the writer of art on art and science on music. So what does all that mean? That means for the last 2+ decades, I've been writing about music and trying and working and intending to make it an element of hip-hop, where it actually is. Not because I thought of this, but because I saw it manifested in different genres, like the heroes I studied and read, like Amiri Baraka and jazz, and people that were writing about the music and embedded in the music, and then also the greats, like the great Bones Malone, who's writing creatively. And I sought ways to take it further, blatantly claim it, and then also document it. Document these works with my own artworks. So that's what this show is all about, right? That's what this show is all about. And just to let you know, I'm working on it for this month. It's layout time for the book my book that is coming soon. It'll be, this first one will be definitely an ebook. Maybe there'll be some print copies. It'll be called The Filtered Real, Essays from the Invisible Renaissance. The Invisible Renaissance being what I call this decade of hip-hop music. An incredible resurgence of MCs of yesteryear, of the last decade, continuing strong, i.e., let's say, Tragic Gaddafi in the yesteryear, Bronze Nazareth through those dark ages as he debuted, and greats of this era like Napoleon the Legend, and others. And then those who fuse all those eras like Rock Marciano and incredible MCs that just came out of nowhere because, even though they had been here before, like Ka and all his classic works this decade. But here's some thoughts. That book is coming. It's mainly essays really about the science of this music, perspectives I've had, and a lot of it focuses on 2018. There's other stuff in there, but I'm using 2018 as a springboard because I thought that 2018 symbolized everywhere where this decade was going. Because listen, this is the last year of this decade, and as we go along, I'm going to be going through different records throughout the Invisible Renaissance this decade, and as the year ends, I'll be going through who I think are the essential MCs of this Invisible Renaissance, meaning that if you were collecting, what are you going to collect from 2010 all the way to 2019, these 10 years? And we're going to do all that, you know what I mean? I don't do too much news, but unless it sparks up thought. But, if you're anywhere, with any kind of semblance of awareness of hip-hop, then you are aware of the Wu-Tang Clan district. You know what I mean? When they name a street after some, all of a sudden everybody act like they like that music and shit. You know what I mean? If they name a street after some artist that I hate, I'm not walking that block. I'm gonna treat it like I'm a Crip and that's a blood block. You know what I mean? They name a street Diddy Corner. They name some shit like that. You know what I mean? I'm not walking down that block, and if I live on that block though, it's gonna be terrible. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move. But they named they named that area an area in Staten Island, Wu-Tang District, and is definitely deserved. But the reason I'm mentioning this though, not only because I'm a Wu head, but over the last couple of years in this decade, part of it though, I'm gonna immediately blame my producer, for ruining Wu-Tang for me on many levels, constantly and doing his best. But one of the things that made me not, I don't cover artists from yesteryear too much unless they have new material, because I've always wanted to spend this decade talking about the new, and that's why, because I saw it from the beginning that it was going to be an invisible renaissance. My stretch run this decade where I really started to flood my writing started in 2012 when I started working with my brother Paragon and Kevlar 7 of the Wiseman, who's no longer here, the late great Remembered Imperfection MC producer from Detroit's Wiseman, when the three of us really put together Premier Hip Hop and made it what it was. And I had that open springboard to write everything and anything I wanted to and really develop what I've been saying since the mid-90s of what the hip-hop writer is, as far as a writer that writes deeply about the music in a deeper way than just, hey, that's hot, that's dope, that sounds ill, and really making these pieces generate like art pieces. The thing about it was, when we look back at Wu-Tang, I haven't really covered Wu-Tang as much because one of the things about Wu-Tang in general, and this is a generalization, right? We could talk about the reasoning that they're making music for the kids of this era, they gotta dumb it down, or people like RZA, they've gone to different pastures of trying to produce different things and trying new styles. A lot of people don't know RZA has produced rock albums. Like he did an album with another rock singer. I forget the name of the album because it was pretty forgettable. RZA's verses were really the great measure of it, because RZA really can still rhyme, as far as content, what his gift was, the content. But RZA is also producing other stuff. Like he produced this year this group called Outlines. Now, if you're really a Wu head, you know that there was this song that came out that we thought was called Outlines, where RZA had a great verse, and it was like 1 minute long, and it had some rock stuff on it, and they did some other track, and they were really good, but it was him working with this group, Outlines, and they're like a rock group, and he has a group, their album was called Two, the number Two, and RZA co-produced all the tracks, and if you take a listen to it, it's got like... it's like today's rock, but rock. It has a poppy feel, but it also has a funky feel. You know what I'm saying? And I gotta listen to it better. I don't know if RZA rhymed on it, but it's not like a mind-blowing record. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. You know what I mean? But when it comes to other genres, I spend a lot of time digging in the crates, so it's not matching up with the crates. But RZA. When it comes to RZA's beats, they're just too clean. They're too clean. Just like my argument, if you want to see immediate argument, Smith & Wesson's new album. Ninth Wonder's beats are too crisp. They're too clean. They're really good, but they're not crackling. There's nothing dirty. There's nothing, you know what I mean? And this is a problem, like if you amplify this with RZA. But why is a street named after Wu-Tang? Let's do our Fox News segment. You know what I mean? Why do we have a street named after a group of cursing, vile rappers that rhymed about drugs and crime and all that kind of stuff, right? We already know the things that the Wu has done in the community. If you really do your research, what they've done in the community, you know about their commercial success. But here's my message about the Wu-Tang Clan and their legacy and how they could continue the legacy. The Wu-Tang Clan, the most disappointing thing that I've seen in the last couple of years is really how mostly everything happens in this decade. Everything gets branded and nothing gets created. So people are making brands, but they're not creating work. So what happens is when Wu-Tang Clan is talked about now, it's a cult following. No one knows what it's about. You could have a Wu-Tang beach ball or you could have a Wu-Tang shirt. It's really irrelevant though. The whole concept of Wu-Tang has been gentrified to the masses and stuff, and it's something where people that don't know anything about Wu-Tang can have a shirt. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many young brothers I meet. Like they'll have, you know, when they have a Run DMC shirt, and I said, "Have you ever heard one Run DMC album, or what's your favorite Run DMC song?" And they go, "I don't really know," or they go, I haven't heard a Run DMC album," and I'm like, I'm not wearing a shirt of nobody. I haven't heard a damn song. I'm not wearing a shirt. You know what I mean? If I wear a Miles Davis shirt, I'm gonna know who, one song he did. You know what I'm saying? One instant, you know, and that's just not the way. It's a consuming culture, and Wu-Tang really branded themselves with that. But look, to me, from the Wu-Tang district and now on in the history post Wu-Tang Clan district, I want to see the real worth of what their movement was about re-embraced. That core of the knowledge of self, that core of emceeing where there was a depth to it. If we collect the last couple of records by Wu-Tang members, so we got the Inspector Deck work that he's done as with 7L and Esoteric, Czarface, that's a great example. The last few Ghostface Killer albums, who Ghostface Killer I find and I still say is a GOAT candidate. All of these MCs, Raekwon's last album, that's a good example too of very quality work. If you listen to all these records, they're not saying anything. The Ghostface records, like the last year, Ghostface, he had the Ghost tape, and he had it done by Big Ghost, produced by Big Ghost. Then he had it remixed twice. So you have the Ghost tape version by Aguilar producing it. Then you have the Ghost tape version by Bronze producing it, and all three of them have nice beats. And it's a fill of new MCs from Benny the Butcher, Conway, all those guys, all over it, everybody. Ghostface verses are just battle bars. When you listen to Czarface, Inspector Deck's verses are just battle bars. Hey, I come in the party, I get shit started, I will knock you out, you're an MC, bar, 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 you suck MC. There's no one that can stop me. I'm the non-stoppable and whatever, right? What the fuck? You know what I mean? There's nothing in there that goes, wow, I don't understand what they said, or like, look at the intricacy. Wow, he really said something here that no one was going to really get, and it makes it rewindable or something like that. There's very little like that. And what disappoints me is when you hear a lot of them talk about what they were doing, they kind of dismiss that vibe. Like, I cringe a little bit when I hear Redman not like There Is a Dark Side. A little bit. But I cringe completely when I hear Ghostface Killer dismiss the abstract verses that are all over Supreme Clientele. It doesn't matter if some Southern hick that was collecting, you know, Mike Jones doesn't like Supreme Clientele. You know what I'm saying? No one gives a shit. You know what I mean? No, if you're a Kanye fan in the 2000s and you didn't understand Supreme Clientele, no one gives a shit. You know what I mean? This was the next level that led to Sean Price, that led to all these things being analyzed. You know, Sean Price's best work is a lot like Supreme Clientele. The difference is that people, like, too many people listen to Sean P and they laugh at Sean P or with Sean P and find no need to say these lyrics are supposed to have some kind of worth or some kind of wordplay and depth. And that's also something that bothered me about that. The deeper the MC, the more laughable he is, the more of a joke they are. So it's almost like the more the black man becomes a poet on the mic, the more he's a joke, something to be laughed at. Oh, I don't understand it and stuff. So now we have what I always say, the liberal arts. We have deep, pseudo-deep MCs that you get on the first try, like J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. You know what I mean? There's no rewindables there. You rewind because he was rhyming too fast. You know what I mean? But Genius.com is fixing that for you. You could sing along. You know what I mean? And then they explain it, and it's not really that The intensity is not really there. So what I would like to see is the Wu-Tang really be inspired to embrace a new way of emceeing. You know, they always innovated the new ways of emceeing. And now they kind of just rest on the mastery of their techniques. And that's dangerous because when music, our people's music, black music, music of the black diaspora has all been bastardized and diluted. So when you rest only on techniques, those techniques you have also get diluted. It's like anything, you know, salsa got syrupy in the 80s. So if you do like just a regular son montuno, a regular groove track in the salsa, and you just sing like with some style, it sounds like you brought it back, but it doesn't have any grit. It doesn't have any of that essence, and it just becomes, well, it just becomes a regular rote Cuban song. It doesn't really have that fire. Same thing happens with the with hip hop, especially. You know, how many MCs are you gonna kill? You know what I mean? It gets very tiring. So I would like to see Wu-Tang really embrace the real reasons why that Wu-Tang Clan district is named that way. You know what I mean? It's for the deeper cult that they made, because even when no one understood any of the music, when to this day a lot of the producers will talk and dismiss Wu-Tang music and RZA as a legendary producer, because RZA did sloppy things and did different things. You know what I mean? Read the Wu-Tang manual and see the things that RZA did. Like he didn't just metronome the breaks that he created. He would basically play each break. That's why when you listen carefully, they're all off. Not like another. If you hear another hip hop song like a Primo track or something, that snare and that break is always gonna hit. RZA tracks don't do that, and they often go off. But that's what's inspired Doom. That's what inspired Doom, and that's what inspired the grittiness stuff. So I'm going to use that as a segue, because I don't like MCs of today being compared to yesteryear, and I don't like them being pigeonholed as a revivalist, you know? And even though, and some of the MCs, they like it. Like this MC I'm going to talk about, he doesn't mind that because he has such love for that era, and he's so inspired by it. But I don't like it as a writer and talking about them. I don't do it. But I segue because I want to make that point. And one of the records, I gave a couple of listens. So I still call it the first listen, because this MC, 3 listens is still your first listen, you know? And I'm talking about Ralphie Reese out of Philly. The God's new album, Bladesylvania. It's another peak for him. It's one of his more complex albums. And that's where I love to see the music going. You know what I'm saying? Because he makes listening music. You know, you sit down and say, what is this guy saying? You know what I mean? How's he saying it? You know, he's blessed with a perfect voice, perfect cadence, that even in his lo-fi, like literally thousands of feet beneath the surface lo-fi, you know what I mean? The basement below the basement, the lo-fi. He still has great clarity. He still has great inflections that you catch, you don't lose them. And, you know, this really is his best work, but it's actually something that doesn't seem like a peak. It seems like in the middle of a rise, you know? And when I was listening to it, because he's God, because he talks about things I understand, though, the inside arcane points, meaning those things that are meant to not be understood, a lot of them reference my world, and they reference my lifestyle, my culture. And I miss records that actually talked about culture that we live in the street, and not just selling the keys. You know what I'm saying? I've got this key, I'm going to do this key, because after a while, though, right, when you listen to, you know, Benny the Butcher, though, you know what the next bar is about. No matter how dope he does it, you know what the next bar is about. He's like, let me skip to the next track. I want to see what else Benny's talking about. That's ridiculous. No one listens to a West Side Gun, Conway, Benny, none of the crime rhyme MCs. You're listening to how they say it, how they do it. When I'm listening to Ralphie Reese, there's a lot of shades to it. You're not really sure what he's going to go into every next verse. You know, and that's the dynamic aspect of it. And there's not a lot of MCs that produce excitement verse by verse and track by track. There's just not that many, you know what I'm saying? He's one of the rare ones. So even though there's a lot of things I do get that are going to be arcane for the average listener, there's a lot of stuff that I'm going like, wow, where is he going with this? Or like, what does he really mean by the way he's flipping that like that? You know what I mean? Because he's making slang upon slang. You know what I mean? He's piling on new words, new ideas. It's all over the place. You know what I mean? And musically, I've always been a fan of what he's doing as a producer because his crates are not Mad Lib deep. They're not. But what he does is that he's great at recreating tracks by using familiar samples merged together, you know? And a lot of his tracks have samples that it'll have 1, 2, sometimes even 3 samples that I'm like, wow, I know all of these, but I never heard him used this way. And, you know, it's a producer gift, one of the rare gifts that producers, a lot of producers that are good don't have, and the great ones have the right drums on the right track. You know what I mean? A lot of MCs choose the bad drums. You know, when I go at Kanye, though, it's usually because he chooses the wrong drums. When I don't like a Kanye track, it's usually because he chooses shit drums and he messes up his own samples because he's one of the great crate diggers. Like, for example, right now, I would say Kanye is a better digger for crates, has more crates, or is selecting from deeper crates than, let's say, Ralphie Reese. But Ralphie Reese is not far behind. He had some soul in there that I was like, oh, I don't know who that is. You know what I mean? So it was that lovely frustration of not having that crate. But Ralphie Reese still has a lot of familiarity in his samples, but he's merging them so well together, though, that, you know, it's just fun to hear. It's fun to hear, and it gives it a new grit. So a lot of familiarity will come through, but it'll come through in a different vein, and it'll give you a new grit. And the main knock on this album, though, is going to be the equalizing. The vocals in the mix. Obviously, there's about 2 or 3 songs where the vocals are not high in the mix at all. So you literally got to, like, press your ears together. You really got to concentrate. And the overall volume peak of the record is very low. Very low. You know what I'm saying? So if you're traveling around with, you know, tinny speakers and shit, and they don't produce very well, you're gonna be frustrated because you need those boom speakers, really powerful speakers, to see the quality of what he put into this record. But I'm gonna leave it at that because it's right now. It's definitely in this nearing first half of the year. This is one of the top albums of the year in this first third of the year. You know what I mean? But you know, the last 2 episodes were about revolution, and they were in honor of Nipsey Hussle, Remembered Imperfection, and his ideas, his marathon movement, all of those things. But there was some, you know, out of all of that, I produced like a little addendum, like a little add-on that I you know, I just, you know, it's on the what I call the industries. You know, a lot of people are from the streets, but when you're in the industry this long, though, it's a real different place. It's a different hood. It's a different violence. You know, it's a different hell, and I liken it to I just call it the industries. And in this particular segment, I just called it the Triple F. You know, the effed up funk facts segment. Because if you're going through the industry now, you're an artist, or you're just trying to find, you know, just a listener that is trying to be more than a consumer. And I would hope what the ideal hip hop person is, everybody that's a listener, everything, is someone that is trying to create in a hip hop vein and either manifest their works as part of the hip hop canon of works, and at that full peak, even making their own element. Because that's what I did, and that's what I think should be done. And that's where I agree wholeheartedly with what KRS-One was saying in his Gospel Hip Hop, that 800-page book that is a real enticing read, by the way. And if you don't want to read those 800 pages, though, as a side note, read the last chapter, because it's one of the best histories of hip hop I've ever read in a tight space. You know what I mean? But in this, let's go through these effed up funk facts. You know what I mean? I said it off air, though. The number one thing to understand is that whack artists are nice guys. Somebody, you know, and Instagram really is ruining everything more so, because you see so many pictures with people where people are together, people are, good artists, bad artists, they're all in ciphers together, and we assume that they all like each other's music because they're in the same picture and shit. If you look through my Instagram, even I'm in pictures with artists that I don't like their music, though. You know what I'm saying? But in those ciphers, we're not talking about music. You know what I'm saying? And they don't really bring up their music because I'm not going to like it. I wish they would bring it up because I would like to tell them why I don't like it and what's wrong with it, or what I think is wrong with it, or what they're not doing, or what they could do. But I'll tell you this. What I found as a scientific, let's do an equation here. The whacker the MC juxtaposed with the longer his career lasts equates to the nicer the MC in a lot of levels. You know what I mean? And once their market grows high enough, that's when they become an asshole again. You know what I mean? But a lot of whack artists though, if they made their money is solidified, they're not worrying about their money getting ruined. They're pretty much nice guys, you know what I'm saying? And that messes up the way people judge music and stuff, you know what I mean? Because we tend to judge music if we like them. And I'm saying, get that shit out of your head, because half of the fakest in the industry, they'll play the role of the nice guy. And I'm not even talking about those guys. I'm talking about the guys that are genuinely nice guys, you know what I mean? They usually suck, you know? And let's talk about, and a lot of this is myths, you know what I mean? So, I heard a lot, though. We got to go to Jay-Z for a little bit because I didn't get to talk about Jay-Z's terrible verse in his Nipsey tribute, using words wrong and probably, I always say this. Every time Jay-Z rhymes now, I always go, most hypocritical verse ever, and then he eclipses that, you know what I mean? The next verse becomes the most hypocritical verse ever, you know what I mean? But Jay-Z just finished doing a concert, right? And he was charging close to $700 a ticket. The next day after the concert, they share a couple of clips, meaning like 3 minutes of clips. One song, maybe that's 3 minutes. Another song, another freestyle, that's another 2-3 minutes. Let's give it 4. Let's 4, right? So maybe another song he did with Nas, or he did another song with Cameron. How much are we going here? I did like 15 minutes, right? Oh, you're giving me extra. He said half an hour. That's bullshit. I didn't name a half hour of music yet. Right? He does a couple of hits. Old songs. He does old songs, like he finally does The Evils or something like that, right? The Evils. And then all of a sudden, that was all worth it. A $700 ticket was worth it. Wow. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to say this, right? The concert was called the B-Sides concert, and I never heard such an underhanded dart in my life. Everybody that's going to concert music, he's giving us more gritty stuff. He just cut all the costs by doing this B-Sides concert. He was able to cut all of the cost of a high production show with lights, phasers, explosions, free T-shirts, free CDs, when they shoot the cannon with T-shirt cannon, none of that shit's going on. You know why? Because it's a B-Sides concert. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't have to do any of the hits, though, so half of the people in the audience, all the people that paid, though, they're probably not, gonna be into shit like that anyway. They're like B-Sides. Like, what do you mean? Like, the shit that he didn't release like that? You know what I'm saying? And when we're talking about a guy like Jay-Z, it's also a dart because B-Sides also equates to, when we look at who came, to B-level artists, B-level artists. You know what I'm saying? When you're in the industry, one of the main things they always talk about is A-list. When you work at a big magazine like The Source or XL, and you go, hey, who should we have on the cover, though? You know what I'm saying? I worked at The Source, and I was like, hey, we should have MF Doom on the cover, though. I tried it, though. I tried that. We should have MF Doom on the cover, though. This is, what do you think, right? This is when was I at The Source? This is 2005, though. Doom has had one of the greatest runs in hip-hop MCing that you'll ever hear. From 1999 to 2005. And with one of the great peak years, 2004, right? And the 2005 album, the one he did with Adult Swim, the Danger Doom album, that album hit the peak charts, actually hit the charts, and it was all over TV, right? If you're on Adult Swim and stuff. So I'm thinking like, yo, let's do Doom. And it's like, I don't know, he's not an A-list artist. And I remember though, what I hadn't been in a big magazine in a couple of years back then, so I remember Double XL and Vibe all over again. It's not A-list. What he should have called the concert was, "This is my B-list concert," making amends with Cameron, Jim Jones, Dipset, whoever it was, with B-list artists. B-list artists, artists that made maybe a gold single, they maybe had a super mega platinum hit, but they're not A-list. They don't command the biggest shows at all times and shit, at all times. They're not automatically platinum. That's what B-list means. So that's what he gave you. He gave you a B-list concert, though. So he shook hands with Cameron, and that's not A-list. That's not even. Where does Cameron rank? Where does Cameron rank in the pantheon of things? You know what I'm saying? When I go back in my time machine, which I'm building, this is the next decade. I'm gonna call it the time machine decade, and I destroy. Because I spent too much time in Harlem, though, to not be affected by Dipset in the 2000s, though. And if I destroy Dipset, what I first destroy is probably big, oversized white tees, the overuse of pink, right? And this thing where battling started, where you had to, let me tell you, and all that kind of shit, which became, along with Jay-Z, what I call a pretty hiccup. You know what I mean? That signified the whole 2000s rapping bars and everything. And then also the pretty thug freestyle. You know what I mean? Where they battle, but it's sexy. You know, they gotta do every bar sexy. You know, and squint after they hit the punchline. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what I mean? But and not in an LL Cool way. You know what I mean? LL Cool way. But seriously speaking, when we go into this concert, though, I'm gonna say it briefly. The misuse of certain words, though, just using them as hot takes. He basically made a hot take, and it took hotly because Twitter was like, "Oh, Jay-Z verse of the year." Every time Jay-Z rhymes, oh, it's a verse of the year. It's a verse of the year, and it's really because he said something braggadocio about money that we end up realizing that wait, all the other corny rappers we've been loving isn't really true. When he says it about money, it's actually true. So when we hear every neon colored fruitcake rapper, rhyme about something in a sing-song trap bap way, and they talk about having all the money, and they bloop bloop, and they go through and they're riding tricycles everywhere like giant babies, and they say that they're balling. Jay-Z comes with a verse and say, wait a minute though, yeah, this is the actual guy, this is the actual billionaire. That other shit was actually not true. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it becomes verse of the year. So he said, in the freestyle, he said, freestyle. Big quotes here for those who's listening audio. Gentrify your own hood before these people do it. First of all, gentrifying is only, it's like saying, it's like if G.I. Joe was rhyming and he goes, terrorize your whole crew. G.I. Joe don't terrorize, you know what I'm saying? Only Cobra can terrorize, you know what I'm saying? Only the white man can gentrify shit. You cannot gentrify your own hood, you know what I'm saying? So gentrify doesn't mean that you take it over and make it better. Gentrify is a long process of the destruction and exiling of the people that live there to then replace it with businesses and real estate that appeals to a new clientele of residents. You who are being gentrified, you feel like you're being gentrified at that moment because you happen to be the people they couldn't kick out. That's how it works. So when when Nipsey Hussle was in his hood, if he was saying to himself, I'm going to gentrify the hood, he would be saying it in the wrong context too. because he's not kicking out undesirables. He's making the lifestyle and the reality, the environment better for the people that already live there, meaning that he's going to make it affordable. So the Crenshaw t-shirts, so correct me if I'm wrong, they don't cost $400 a tee. You know what I'm saying? They don't. They might now, right? You get online and shit like that, right? Oh my goodness. Oh boy. That's it. The show's over. But the point was, though, is that it was about the community. When you gentrify the hood, though, we got to understand that if we're still in the hood, all of us, we're actually still there by accident, by not intention. That wasn't the intention, to still be there. And then the hypocrisy that Jay-Z is one of the great co-signers. I'm even being nice. I'm not calling him a direct gentrifier. I say a co-signer. Go look up the articles. Go look up the articles, and when they asked him about gentrification, and he did his laugh, you know, I'm not Effion Crockett. I can't do that laugh, that high-pitched laugh. But he laughed about it and said, oh, yeah, some things are going to cost more. That's right. Some things are cost more. And then he said, claim eminent domain. Eminent domain doesn't mean that. This is not Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. You don't hold hands, surround the community center, and then they can't eminent domain the shit. Eminent domain means that the government takes over your property because they have already decided that it would be better off for said community that they have defined. So if they take it over, like they did the area that Jay-Z supposedly loved, and he was like, oh, Marcy me, I miss the old Marcy, boo-hoo, right? But the old Marcy was what he had a hand in destroying and bringing the Barclays with. Boy, that's the greatest crocodile tear song in the history of mankind. You know what I'm saying? The history of mankind. You know what I mean? It's like if Trump isn't voted and then like my son makes a Trump tribute song. You know, like you can't make a crocodile tear song more so than Marcy Me. But here's the thing, right? When we go through that verse, right? He said, and have your people move in. That's not really how it goes. That's not how it goes, because if you you still would be, what he said in the second bar is more like what gentrification would be. If you said claim eminent domain and move your people in, it's not about kicking anybody out. Kicking people out and putting who you want in is the whole point of gentrification. Because then we would have our own standards and stuff, and then we would be saying that they're undesirables. The point was to fix the community by fixing the standards and elevating the level of culture that is already in the community, right? And he goes, that's a small glimpse of what Nipsey was doing. For anybody still confused as to what he was doing, thank you for clearing up the confusion, Jay-Z, in his exceptional B-list artist show. And let me tell you something. Until Nas became a massive entrepreneur, he always, in all magazines, he always teetered as an A-list artist with a B-list resume. Nas is the most confusing artist to pitch. He'll be in the cover of a magazine like an A-list artist, but he basically doesn't actually have the statistics of an A-list artist. Doesn't. It's crazy. You know what I mean? And that's why we root for Nas and stuff. That's why as a collective we root for Wu-Tang. Because as a collective, Wu-Tang is A-list. As the individual legends and greats, then they're not. You know what I'm saying? They're not. They wouldn't be A-list. You know what I mean? But but here's my thing, and I'm gonna give my conspiracy theory again. I really think that Jay-Z is putting himself as a political force. He does a lot of liberal things. He'll produce this documentary about Rikers and that boy that committed suicide, right? He'll put his voice behind. He'll put his money behind Meek Mill. You know, the people that are representing the liberal voice of black youth today. You know what I mean? And he tries to buy a lot of other people. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody's for sale, though. You know what I mean? Not everybody's for sale. But all right. Here's some other things, because it's an addendum and ideas. And you know, I'm looking at it though. This episode is coming out more like Revolution Part 3. Right? We talk about Wu-Tang. We talk about all of this kind of stuff. But and I didn't even. I'm not even gonna get a chance to talk about my fun stuff because it would take too long. But I'll tell you what it is later. What we're missing until the next episode. But I made this point in the Revolution episodes, but I have to make it again. When you deal with the community and you build with the community, there is always drama when you're dealing with our youth that are in the gutter and the midst of the ghettos of the U.S. of A. If you think that you're gonna go over there and teach kids how to hold hands and shit and all of that kind of stuff, that's not how it works. You know what I'm saying? When you see kids and you're trying to build with them, and I'm speaking from experience because just like my producer, just like me, we're not just brothers with the knowledge of self that know that we are the true and living God scientifically, mentally, physically, but we also live as 5%ers. That means that we're always teaching the truth that we know to those who don't know it and could use it. So we're always in conflict with people's perceptions of what they think they are. And some of the biggest stereotypes some of the biggest things that uphold the degradation of our community is the stereotype and cliche that is embedded inside the youth's mind of who they think they are based on what they were told that they are, right? And it doesn't help though with just bad music. Now, mind you, I didn't talk about just the visuals of the music. I'm talking about bad music. You know, bad music stunts creativity. Because no one is out there and going like, hey, what could I make that's better than that? You don't listen to Migos and go, whoa, hey guys, we got to meet up today at 5 o'clock after school. We got to make something that's better than this guy. And that's what's going to get us in the game. You know what I'm saying? Do you know how many record labels will denounce a striving signee because they say, this is really good stuff, but it's got no pop appeal to it? I've been in those rooms. I've been in the room where I was at the label for months and I was like, wait, who is that old white man walking in? Who's that old white man? Who's him? And he sits down and says, yes. What do we have here? These are supported by the markets? This is what they say. They're saying this back in 96. Are these supported by the markets? No. We're going to have to do something more commercial here. We need to get everywhere with this. How is this going to work? And they don't listen to the album. They don't listen to any of it. You know what I'm saying? And only certain people really, really were able to make quality music on a commercial level like that because they already proved that they could do it on the biggest scale. That's why people like Quincy Jones are a real anomaly. You know what I mean? They're a real anomaly. You don't get people like that. Remember when Quincy Jones got his Quest Records? Quest Records was able to do whatever it wanted. He was able to call any musician he wanted to work with across the globe, fly him in, do anything he wanted. And that's what you have to look at in that Quincy documentary on Netflix. And remember, Quincy was able to call any favor in, any idea he had. He said, you know what? I was thinking about rocking this harmonica joint, but like with these vocals piercing in. Let me call up my man Stevie because he's good with that. And there you go. Stevie Wonder's on the phone. You know what I mean? But see, us as hip-hop, we had that ability too. Because how many times, though, in the history of us being around brothers making music in the basement, they said, yo, I just heard the dopest record. We got to make something that uses that shit and is on that vibe because it's incredible. We got to sample that. And if you think that's copying and that's this hip-hop copying and that's what ruined music, you don't know shit about any of the music black people have been making. Not one thing. Because every single great artist has always been studying other music. Miles Davis studied music, classical music on end, where by the late 60s, he didn't even listen to jazz. He was only listening to classical. He studied classical, he played it on the piano, and he brought those ideas into the studio. When they made Sketches of Spain, for example, it was an adagio from, what was it? An arpeggio from Adagio. I think the guy's name was Adagio. But he brought that record in. And he was with Bill Evans and others, and he said, listen, we got to do something with this record. And that became Sketches of Spain. You know? So literally sampling, what we would call in many respects interpolating. You know what I'm saying? The jazz artists were doing this a long time ago. and very innovative, and all through the musics. Roots reggae is built on it. Roots reggae's best is built on understanding to a higher level, a deeper and a different level R&B records. Because there was no national recorded music in Jamaica. The radio stations were all R&B music. Until in the 1950s, they started saying, look, I think we could sell something made by Jamaicans. And they're like, nah, it's a crazy idea. And that's where raga and all that stuff, and you see this wonderful development. And that's why it's one of the youngest musics, but one of the most influential, right? And that's what led to hip-hop. But I said all that to say this. If we don't have a culture of creativity in the street, if we don't have a culture of creativity that we could bring the youth, I don't mean culture of expression. I don't mean culture of expression, because we got that. We got that. We get a couple of whoop that trick, and we have a hit, right? Since 2000, the Dark Ages, right? That's why I call it the Dark Ages, because that was seen, when I saw, what was that? When I saw Hustle and Flow, I thought that was a spoof movie. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was like I thought it was a spoof movie, and then I'm seeing that they're winning the Oscar for Best Song. I said that was supposed to be a joke about how the industry lets anybody can make a way out of the hood with no talent. But all of a sudden, when they're pitching the movie, best movie of the year, shit like that, and they're going, watch a man though that had real talent in the hood come up through the grime in the ghetto of the ghetto, and through all the hell and all of the tribulation, you know what I mean, and all that kind of shit. And I'm like, he made shit music. You know what I'm saying? He made shit music. That's why all the hoes kept going in the room and disrespecting. Even the hoes were disrespecting. Why were the hoes disrespecting? There was only one hoe that respected him, because everybody knew it was shit music, right? And we said, look, there's one lovable hoe that will fuck with this music, because she loves the man greater than his dumb ideas of what he could do. That's a spoof movie. You know what I'm saying? That's a spoof movie. You're going to tell me that was quality music? They showed you how they made it, though. He just went bang, bang, bang. I whoop that trick. Yeah, yeah. I'm telling you, though, in the studios of Sesame Street, they make bigger bangers than that. You know what I'm saying? And then people, now, we get a trend now today that people listen to music from the 2000s. So, yo, what was that group? Young Guns. I saw somebody post a Young Guns song, and I just want to be familiar with music I hate sometimes, and why I hate it. I click on it. This is the beat. I'm going to recreate the beat, though. Right? And I'm not doing Al Jarreau or anybody like doing, right? Bobby McFerrin on the vocals. But the beat was tinny. It sounded like pops. It was weak. And then I look through the comments, because YouTube comments always make me laugh. And they're going, oh, I remember when music used to be this good. Oh, I miss the old days of this real hip-hop. And I'm like, this is garbage. This is shit-made music. This is the beginning of the Dark Ages. You know what I mean? And in the future, I'm going to have segments about the Dark Ages, the light of the Dark Ages, who I really thought was saving the Dark Ages, who was swallowed up by that engulfing light. You know what I mean? It's funny, because I just got into Game of Thrones, and when you watch season 2, you see that beast, that magic woman, that red lady, give birth to like a ghost, a black ghost that comes out and starts killing the other king, the rival king. That's how I saw this music in the Dark Ages. Some kind of black puffer nastiness that came out. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna say this, right? When we're dealing with the youth, understand though that until they are comfortable enough to listen to us, they are always in disbelief of everything. And that's the beauty of the youth. They disbelieve everything. One of the problems of having a music like hip-hop that is supposed to be a counterculture, now just a subculture and even a pop culture, is that it makes people that are oppressed believe everything. Because now they believe the success. They believe in the rewards that are only given to a few. You know what I'm saying? And they also are shut down to all of the levels of great music that could be done and make great money, but are on a lesser tier. You know what I mean? Those other niche markets, I'll call them, are not even looked at. You know what I'm saying? But here's another fun fact. A funk fact. I always say this. It's about using hip hop as a. I was saying this before about hip hop being a tool of expression, as opposed a tool of expressing ideas as opposed to just expressing your feelings only. You know, there's a difference though. You know, all music starts out being useful by expressing your feelings. But if you really study music, like especially like you can see it better with like the learning of an instrument. When you talk about jazz, is a great example. The idea was to learn how to play the instrument and then play it uniquely. The idea was that finally you could learn how to express all of your ideas that you're thinking in your head of life, everything, and express them as a note. Too many people did this great. But if there was one album to use as the expression of that, though, I would definitely pick John Coltrane's Love Supreme. If you want to see what I'm talking about, listen to John Coltrane's Love Supreme. See how just the playing of notes can express ideas that go beyond just getting feelings across, but real ideas. You know what I mean? And that was the avant-garde era where people were really getting it, though. The music was weird. Sun Ra, that shit is weird. That shit will fuck you up. You're like, I don't know. And a lot of Coltrane albums in the 60s are like, they're just long solos. It's equivalent to hip hop where like you hear MC and he gives you, like Cannabis records. That's a good example, like Cannabis albums. A lot of them are really good. But they're just like 12-minute songs. And you're like, what the fuck is this shit about? And when you think it's over, he's like, well, the Cannabis has more to give. And he's like, it's bars, bars, bars. But all his ideas are going to be expressed. A lot of Coltrane records are like that. You know what I'm saying? They're not really songs. You know what I'm saying? So where do we go where hip hop can be a daily tool of expression for development and upliftment, then as an allotment of one's talents? Both have to be in tune. If we don't have a culture, if we don't have a music, if we don't have an arts that actually funnels real talent, then what happens is that the people that have real talent can never develop their ideas. And the people with real talent are often the deeper thinkers. The people that have spent time to probe into their own ideas. And often the people of great talent are usually the people that are spending time studying other talent and other expressions. So they end up being a more learned person. That's a fact. That's why when we look to the art world, we often find very learned people. You know what I mean? These things go together. And that's why, like with the Wu-Tang movement, you saw what? Some of the greatest artists of all time. And then they're also linked with one of the most deepest ideologies that the street has ever known. To me, ever. The knowledge of self. Through the 5% Nation, the Gods and Earths. And all of the research, all of the study, all of the ideas that it extends itself to. You know what I mean? And the last thing I'm going to harp on, though, because it is all harp on, because they're funked up facts. They're supposed to be fucked up. You know what I mean? And is the last one is and I hope people might not like it, but I think the entire hip hop community as a whole is bullshit. I think hip hop community sucks. I think it is predicated on people just trying to make hit records and make records and be popular, and a whole bunch of consumers. I'll give you an example. I find it, in my bouginess, I find it disgusting that the average hip-hop consumer of hardcore music, not the pop stuff, when you talk about what they listen to almost no other music. So the foundations of where the music comes from, we're not even talking about other genres of the black diaspora that we would love them to go into, but the ones that are really heavily mined, soul music, funk, the soul jazz, right? Because people go jazz, but most hip-hop records are not using jazz per se. They're using soul jazz and funk jazz. You know, and there's other reasons, though. That's my other theory, that hip-hop is rooted in shitty music. You know, sampling shitty music. And it's not because they like shitty music. It's because it's easier to sample a disco records break with limited technology than it is to find and extract a break from, let's say, a Jimmy McGriff organ record, because the filtering wasn't there yet. They didn't know how to filter. They didn't know how to do all that stuff yet. You know what I mean? But this hip hop community isn't an active community. They're consumers. So we're not thinking about how do we use this hip hop to make our things. No one even goes, yo, I'm hip hop too. And nobody goes, well, what do you make? Well, I bought like 60 albums this year. And so we just have consumers. And that's not what makes a community. You know what I mean? And that's what, to me, is the foundation. That's, if we want to think of the last thing I'll say, fuck it, this is like Revolution Part 3, right? The bad stuff. One of the great things about Nipsey is that in his business movement, which was not really a counterculture, it definitely wasn't militant and revolutionary like that to me, but it was a counter-capitalism, which was really highly respected by me and should be by everybody. He was making hip-hop a culture again, where you have an intimate relationship with the artist, but they also have a community. He didn't invent this. He just became popular with that because people like Immortal Technique, Hassan Salam, a lot of other people have been doing this on levels where their records didn't go platinum or all of that, and they weren't on big-time labels, but they were doing that. And it's part of the culture, and it's something we got to get back to. You know what I mean? But on that note, next week, I didn't do the fun stuff. I was going to give a review of George Benson's autobiography because I love George Benson. So we just talk about George Benson. You know, real quick, when you're in a doctor's appointment or you're in an elevator and you're like, yo, that's a banger they're playing though. It's not that smooth shit is banging. You might be listening to George Benson. You know what I mean? But until next time, but there'll be a lot more stories to tell, writings to recite, and records to rewind and reminisce. I'm your host, Sunez Allah, a.k.a. Skillet Straight Low. And as always, the Power Right Show is a never respect fake broadcast. Peace.